Hello everyone, it's been a little while since we last spoke and there is a very good reason for that. Welcome to episode 6, I think this is, of Photographer Diaries. I took a step back and I've been a lot quieter. You'll probably have noticed on socials, YouTube, the podcast and all that kind of stuff. Now there's good reason for that. I basically decided that I was spending so much time on, trying to grow my personal brand and do all these things that it was taking away from the one thing that's the most important to me, right? And that's the craft, that's photography. I kind of had this realization when I was in Morocco with Yaz on holiday. Basically decided that I needed to focus on basically just creating extraordinary work. That's what I want to be known for, that's what I want to get paid, most of my money for. I decided to just hone in on that and focus on that. So that's the goal. So instead of talking about it, I decided to get my head down, create some personal shoots, organize some things, go out there and make it happen. So I shot 4 personal projects in 4 weeks, and this is what I learned. So the 4 shoots were all very different. Bam, 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 bam. Now, they all cost different amounts of money. They were all very different. And in this video, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty, break them down, talk about costs, my reason behind them, and then out of the 4, which would I do again? Which would I not do again? What do I wanna do more of moving forward? So, 1 was in a studio, cost me more money. 1 involved flying to document an athlete and spending money to go abroad. And 2 were more fly on the wall, documentary kind of style sports pieces where I just showed up and I was a fly on the wall and I documented what I saw. But before we get into it, why personal shoots? For those that have followed the podcast or followed me for a while, you know that I harp on about personal work all the time. For me, personal projects are not about replacing paid work. Paid work still teaches you loads of stuff. But personal work and personal projects give you a different kind of clarity because basically no one is setting the brief for you. You're essentially getting to create exactly the kind of thing that you want to create and you can put it out to the world and show what you're capable of and what you want to get hired for. You can get super creative, there's no confines, there's no client over your shoulder saying, oh, can we do it like this? There's no brand guidelines, there's nothing. You can go in and shoot with exactly your eye and show the world what it is that you want to create and start to get a feel for your style as well and what works for you and what doesn't. So let's talk about project number 1, and that was the studio shoot I did with the fencers. Now, some of you might have seen this on my Instagram, it's these images here. Basically, I knew that I wanted to do something with a sport I hadn't touched before. So I wanted to really show that I could take a sport that really shot that much before and wasn't that well documented and put my spin on it and show that it actually can be shot in a cool way that stands out and is really unique. So I knew that I wanted to do that with fencing. I had this idea, I'm not sure really where the idea came from, but I knew that I had this vision in my head of wanting to shoot a fencer in, the nice white uniform with a blood red backdrop. So I knew it would stand out, the white from the red. I could create something that's really cool and striking for my portfolio. The reason for doing it in a studio is because we had a controlled environment. So this was the project that cost me the most money. Essentially, I spent over £1,000 of my own money. Obviously, that's money that the business has made that I'm reinvesting back into the business. Hiring a studio, hiring assistant, lighting. The backdrop was actually the most expensive part of this shoot. The backdrop itself cost me I think it was pretty much £500 for the day, and that's including VAT. And some of you might be like, whoa, that's crazy. I wanted a textured backdrop that was hand painted in that nice red color. And the reason for that is it almost represented the blood. If you were to ever get cut by a sword, you would leak that blood and it would show up. So I really just wanted that contrast. The background represents the blood and the white is the clean fighters. So yeah, the backdrop for this shoot was kind of the non-negotiable for me. In my opinion, I think that they shoot a lot better. They absorb light in a different way. They're obviously like a canvas. This one almost was like a leathery one in a way. It just makes it much more vibrant. I don't think paper backdrops kind of give that same texture and feel. It was a gamble. I was like, do I want to spend, £500 of my own money from the business on a backdrop for a shoot that I'm not being paid for, I'm going to be out of pocket for, and there's that risk, right? It might work, it might not work. But I was willing to take the risk. The whole idea came from the backdrop itself, and I needed that vibrant red texture. So we went with it. I had clients and friends that are photographers turn to me and say, once I posted the work, that it was probably some of the favourite work that they've ever seen me do, which was obviously a huge relief. Like, I share it on socials, it did super well on socials, and it was just really cool to see it be so well received when you've got an idea that's born from your mind, you make it happen, you invest that money into it, and yeah, it went down super well. I'm yet to add it to my website, but I've already pinned it on my Instagram page, and it's front and center, and I think is some of the most recent work that represents what I can do to the level that I think I can shoot at. Shoot number 2 was me paying for myself to fly abroad to go and shoot a athlete. Now, it's a funny story this. So basically, 7 years ago when I first moved to London, I think it was like 2018 or 8 years ago, when I was just starting out, I shot this model called Reve. And we were literally just on the streets of London shooting some kind of headshots, and it was my first experience into photography. I just decided to get into it. Now, she was also a runner at the time. Since then, like 8 years later, Reve is now a professional athlete. She's sponsored by On. She's run for Team GB. She's an Olympian, and I've kind of gone on and now photographer full time and shot in the sports world. And eight years later, we've kind of looped around together, and we've finally got to work together again, which was super nice. So a bit of a full circle moment. So we stayed in touch, we followed each other that whole period, obviously going off and doing our own things, and I've really wanted to get round to shooting with her again. We finally made it happen. She was out training, like a lot of these athletes are, abroad, so they were out training in Spain, and I was communicating with her and decided to fly myself out there, spent about £650 of my own money for flights, hotel, stayed for, I think it was 3 nights, and decided to go out and shoot and basically, again, invest my own money that I'd made back into the business to go out and document these athletes and get access to them. Took myself out to Spain. The weather wasn't great. We had some hiccups along the way, but we managed to get actually just one afternoon of shooting in for various reasons. Now, it was very different from the first project, and I'd spent a different amount of money for a very different scenario. You can't predict the weather, you can't predict things when you're flying out to somewhere, and you don't have that control that you have in the studio, right? So it was a bit of a risk, but I decided to take the risk, and we got some really cool stuff. And when I came to the editing process, I found it was a lot different compared to the first project we spoke about, the fencing shoot. What I loved about the fencing shoot is because we had good lighting and it was a controlled environment, I felt like I could really push the grade and the boundaries in post. Whereas with this, it was, struggling with harsh sunlight and all that kind of stuff that meant I was still really happy with the shots I got, but it was just a very different experience and a very different process. Shared the results, I really liked them. They didn't go down as well as the fencing shoot, but it was a very different shoot. Again, this was a more lifestyle shoot in a way, but I'd invested my own money to go out there and make it happen. Would I do it again? Absolutely. So I'd be tempted to invest that money again to go out and document them and get myself in front of these athletes. Because some of the stuff you can get with elite athletes is just next level, and it's kind of hard to replicate those elite training environments in like a normal stage shoot. And the pressure you can put on yourself when you're self-funding it and spending money to take a weekend out. The weekend is my time I get to spend with Yaz. We're both busy working our jobs. So I lost that time with family, friends, my partner, spending my own money. It's a risk to take. You don't know if you're gonna get the things that you want, but it certainly puts more pressure on you to deliver, right? In a good way, I think. I've got to go out there and create images for my portfolio. Now let's talk about shoots 3 and 4. Well, technically 5. I technically shot 5 in a month. So shoot number 1 was the jiu-jitsu shoot. So I'd never shot BJJ before. The only martial arts I've kind of shot before is boxing. So I wanted, again, to shoot something new that I hadn't done before, just to expand my skill set and experience as a sports photographer. So I hit up Escapeology, a jiu-jitsu place down in Cambridge, which isn't too far from where I live. It's just an hour's drive away. Hit them up, they said come down, and I literally went and just documented a class, let those guys do their thing, and I was just there with my camera, super fly on the wall, just walking around the room to the side, not getting involved, not directing anyone. So that was the first one. Second one was London Marathon. I'd actually done some commercial work in the morning. Shout out to the guys at Creative Players. I was doing a shoot for them for Tag Heuer, the watch brand, who obviously sponsored the London Marathon. I was doing some portraits in the morning at the start line. Once I'd shot the portraits, I'm in the cafe with the client, getting them turned around so they can go live on Tag Heuer's stories. Once that was done, I went into town. I think I met my friend at like mile 22, 23, shout out Max. He was there with some of his mates, and I basically wanted to do like a bit of a personal series of capturing people in pain and all the different facial expressions that come from, you know, marathon day and coming to the end of the marathon, hitting the wall and what that can look like facially and emotionally. So I pitched up for an hour before I had to leave again and get out the city. So I got some shots of that, which was my next personal shoot. And the fifth one was actually, I went all the way over to Great Yarmouth in Norfolk to document Sophie, who is a shot putter. But again, I wanted to go and document a sport that isn't that well covered and just see if I could make it look cool and see what I could create and really push myself creatively. So all three of those things. The only thing that is costing me is travel, right, and time. So, you know, getting down to the marathon, I was already there for a job anyway. Getting across to Great Yarmouth for a shoot, you know, it was a 2.5 hour drive for me. So just paying for fuel, and same again to go to Cambridge. Getting down to Cambridge, driving there, I think it was an hour, paid for the parking, and then I was in the class for an hour and a half, and then drove home. So, you know, compared to flying myself out to Spain and paying for that and my accommodation, or hiring a studio, lighting and crew for the day, these things cost way less. So essentially much more stripped back, less production, less pressure, but less control as well and less direction. What did I enjoy about them? I loved challenging myself, you know, going and shooting a shot putter, having never really studied or watching shot put before. Same with jiu-jitsu, like I'm walking into that room for the first time, having to understand which angles look best, which are the best timings to get the shot that I need, how close can I get, how far do I need to be, can I get in close to the wide angle, am I going to obstruct them, am I going to get in the way? I'm seeing all these movements in sports for the first time. I think the thing for me and my mindset was, oh, if Adidas came along and said, hey Matt, can you shoot this shot putter, or can you shoot this jiu-jitsu athlete for the next Olympic Games or whatever, I want to be able to go into that shoot having already touched that sport in some way, already having shot it, and have a better and bigger understanding of the dynamics and the movement and what looks good and what works and what doesn't. I'm honing and working on that skill of seeing, I'm shooting what I see, and I'm having to look for shots within a space. So, you know, the jiu-jitsu ones are a great example. I'm just scanning the room constantly. I think there was about, you know, 5 or 6 pairs of people kind of fighting, grappling, training with each other. And I'm walking around the room scanning for images and seeing, you know, that emotion, or someone's in a headlock and I want to capture that from that angle, and then I'm seeing something else, and you're just adapting to what you see, which is essentially the challenge of unpredictability, right? It's unpredictable, and I suppose that is more kind of what almost documentary style photography is. So now to the final question. Was it all worth it? Yes, because what it did was give me clarity. The first thing that I've realised off the back of these 5 shoots, at where I am in my career at the moment, there's a certain kind of level to the work that I want to put out, right? I think out of those projects, the work that's at that level is probably the fencing shoot. You know, and it just so happens that that was the shoot that got, you know, was the best received, it did the best on social media, and it's the one out of all the shoots that I'm like, yeah, that's going kind of front and center in my portfolio. I basically realized that I'd rather do one of those shoots every month rather than cramming in a load and going out and shooting loads of different athletes. Take my time, be more considered, whether that is a studio shoot or it's on location, but take my time with it more and create something that is a higher end, higher packaged like product. That means spending the money on it. And I don't mind reinvesting money back into the business to kind of execute these shoots. But obviously I can't be doing them every week. So, you know, if I can do probably one elevated shoot every 4 to 8 weeks, that is more extraordinary, I think, in terms of the level of work, then I think that's one of the main things that I've learned from this kind of little experiment. I do love the sports documentary stuff, but for example, the shoot that I did out in Spain with Reve, if I could do it again, If anything, I would have spent a little more money and taken an assistant out with me, or hired someone over there that could do things like drive a car so that I can get running shots and tracking shots. And not everyone would probably notice it, but it does elevate the level of work to, I think, a considerable degree, which is the kind of thing that I want to be putting in my portfolio on my page to showcase the standard of work that I know that I can create. So yes, I would spend 100% the money again on the fencing shoot. I would spend money again on going out and documenting the athlete, but I would probably change that shoot next time and either get an assistant out there with me or think about ways that I can make it look more high-end. I don't know if I'm going to be in as much of a rush to go out and shoot the more documentary style sports where I go and shoot like a jiu-jitsu class, for example, or a training of some sport. You know, when I compare it to the studio work or the work that has more direction and a crew and I'm directing it in the way that I want it, when I stack them side by side, yes, they are two different shoots, but I prefer that more like elevated, directed kind of, you know, level work. I just gravitate to it more. I prefer it in post-production. I enjoy the edit more, I think. Not to say that I don't like that side of stuff, but with the direction I want to go in, I think this stuff is going to allow me to really push the boundaries creatively. There's something really special about observing, and I do really enjoy it, but I think that the next shoot that I go into will definitely be this kind of curated, I'll spend money on it, and it's like, cool, how can I take something to the next level and make it look like a really, really cool, say like sports commercial for that sport. And I think that's just me, off the back of this kind of experiment, getting the clarity of what kind of photographer I want to be. Yes, I want to be able to do both, and I want to be good at being able to do both. That's what I'm gravitating towards more at the moment, and that's what I think makes my work stand out more at the moment. So basically the biggest realization is I don't just want to be busy, I want to be busy with intention. I don't just want to be posting constantly for the sake of posting. I want to make work that actually means something to me and makes me feel like I'm moving in the direction that I actually want to go in. And that, as you know, is being one of the best sports photographers on the planet. Like, I say it out loud, that's what I'm driven to kind of achieve, and that's what I want to go and do. Less noise, better work, that's the goal. If you made it this far for the video, thanks so much for watching. Please click subscribe. I'd really, really appreciate it. There'll be more videos to come. Again, quality over quantity. I'm not trying to release every week. I want to release when I've got something to say, when I've learned something, and then I want to share it with you guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.